Hello, everybody, and welcome to Grimwit with Dimwits. I'm T.
And I'm Blondie.
And we want to welcome everybody back from our little hiatus. This is our first episode following Reignited Sparklers, our reintroduction of some of our, I don't know if I want to say favorite stories, but stories that were a little bit more meaningful to us for different reasons.
They had a little bit of a bang to them for us.
They stood out for whatever the reason was. They stood out. But welcome back, everybody. And we do appreciate you getting ready to start a brand new year with us. We have some really exciting stories lined up for you.
Can't wait.
Me neither. Woohoo. I'm still in a sparkler kind of mood.
Oh, and speaking of sparklers, I hear what's going on in your town.
Oh my gosh, right? It's an every year kind of thing. Every summer, we just sit around and wait to see where are the fires going to pop up this year. There's a few that always pop up right near my house, but they're already going. In fact, there's two that are very, very close. And then another one I'm trying to figure out where it's at because I think it's close to me, but I'm not sure. But yeah, we just sit around and just hope our house doesn't burn down. It's really, really wonderful.
Sounds like it. Is this your prelude to being in hell?
I better get used to it, huh?
Right.
It's a little bit scary. They always get close, but I have a lot of faith in the fire department. I always think they definitely won't let them get to the houses. So, but we'll see. We'll see how that works. But speaking of fires, have you heard about the goats that Glendale hired to help with mitigating the wildfire risks?
I've heard of animals used, but not the story in Glendale.
Yeah, so the city of Glendale is using what they're calling firefighting goats to keep their community safe by clearing out all of the vegetation. I'm just going to read to you a little bit right here. The agile animals have been assigned a critical mission to mow down 30 acres of dry vegetation in several weeks, helping to create natural fire breaks and prevent wildfires from spreading. I think that's freaking genius.
That's awesome, actually.
Yeah.
Did they have little fire hats?
Right. Little to-go bags. Pack it in. Just take whatever you can. Eat it later.
Right.
Stock up for the winter. Eat it all. So they're saying on average they can eat about 4% of their body weight each day. I think I could do that too. If that vegetation was coated in chocolate, I might be out there helping them.
Well, they have bugs coated in chocolate. Maybe you could help in that aspect.
So anyway, maybe we need a few more old goats out here and we'd be a lot safer.
A few more on top of what you already have.
Yeah, we got a lot out here, that's for sure.
Well, I know they have I think it's goats and maybe cows. There's a donkey. No, I know there's a donkey at the Orange County Fairgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
They have a farm there all year round, but up where the amphitheater is, around it is just vegetation. And they just put them up there and just let them mow it over.
Yeah, I mean, it's genius. It really is because, some of those areas that they want the firefighters to get into are really dangerous for them.
Exactly.
So let those goats get up there and do what they do best and everybody wins.
True. Don't they do more?
Well, they fertilize the land because, they're pooping what they're eating. And so they help with the next year's crops.
Well, that's just very interesting. Thank you for sharing.
I love the idea. All right, so enough about the fires. I'm sure there'll be more of that coming as the summer progresses. But what do we got going on for this week, Miss Blondie?
Well, this week, this is a story about a woman who is described as narcissistic, friendly, brazen, ruthless, dangerous, arrogant, and a diabolically calculating con artist. Her name is Viktoria Nasyrova, and she was born on December 15th, 1975, in a town called Armavir in Russia.
I like how her description was so many bad things, but you started that off with friendly.
I only saw one good thing about her. I thought, you know what, I'll throw it in there.
You're like, we're gonna give it all.
That's right. Let's cover all the bases. So I saw this story on 48 Hours with Peter Van Sant doing the interviews, and it was crazy what people will do and the reasons why they do them.
She sounds like a perfect subject for our show.
Yes. Just refer to all the adjectives.
Friendly and crazy.
Okay, so let's get our grim on. It's 2014. Viktoria is 39 years old and makes friends with a woman named Alla Alexenko. She moved in next door to Alla in her apartment building. Now, Alla spoke to her daughter, Nadia Ford, every day since they weren't able to see each other much because Nadia lived in Brooklyn, New York. Alla was a very trusting soul and said that Viktoria was extremely friendly and that she had become her best friend. During one of their conversations, Alla tells her daughter Nadia that she is sending some special gifts to her and that her best friend Viktoria will be delivering them to her on her upcoming trip to New York. These gifts included a couple of fur coats, valuables, and $6,000 in cash. Viktoria kept putting off her trip, which meant she never was able to meet up with Nadia like she was supposed to in early October. Alla got suspicious and asked Viktoria for the gifts that she was supposed to deliver to Nadia back. Alla was never seen again.
Yikes. That's a confrontation that you should never have alone, especially since, she was already suspicious. Always bring backup, people. No matter who it is, always bring backup.
Always. On October 5th, Nadia tried to call her mom repeatedly with no answer. She said she tried to call her hundreds of times. She got worried because her mom always answered the phone. She had some suspicions about this strange woman, Viktoria, especially when you take into account that this is a 39-year-old woman who befriended a 54-year-old woman to the point that they are best friends. Viktoria had a glamorous kind of aspect to her, and Alla was a sweet little mom type. Now, I'm not judging, I'm just making an observation.
And, I see why it's unique, but I know people from different backgrounds and ages can still be friends. I mean, my life has always reflected that.
Of course, I see that as well. I think the age is one thing, but the lifestyles were completely different. I think that's where some of the suspicions came in.
Makes sense.
So Nadia starts doing some investigating and looks up her mom's cell phone records online, like I'm sure we have all done a time or two.
I don't know who you're referring to.
Oh, I've totally done it. And she finds that the last phone call on the log was an incoming call at 11 p.m. from Viktoria. Nadia starts to panic and decides to travel to Russia to go look for her mom and find out what happened, why she's not answering the phone. Nadia arrives in her hometown, Krasnodar, near the Black Sea, and her first stop was her mother's apartment. Once she got there, she convinced Viktoria to meet her outside so she can confront her. Viktoria proceeds to shout at Nadia, saying, "Allah is alive," but then she turns, runs back up the stairs, and into the building. Nadia is chasing her and asking her, where is she going? And that was basically the end of their interaction. There was really no proof that Viktoria had even done anything.
Yeah, but geez, if Viktoria was trying to play it cool and not look guilty, that's definitely not the way to do it.
I think she was probably a little taken aback that her daughter was knocking on her front door.
Yeah, but I mean, geez, be a little bit more cool.
Nadia notified the police and had them go with her inside her mother's apartment. When she walked into the apartment, Nadia realized that valuables of her mother's were missing, expensive jewelry, family heirlooms, and most of her mother's life savings of $40,000. Alla was pretty clever. There was a credenza dresser type thing that had a toe kick under it. But if you remove the toe kick part, there was a space where you could hide things. That's where the money was hidden.
Interesting. I'm such a sucker for anything with secret compartments. I'm all over that.
And don't think I already looked through the house going, okay, what can I change? What can I make a secret compartment?
I actually have in a credenza that I have in my living room. I'm totally giving it away now. That has 2 compartments where there's like a secret button underneath because it doesn't even look like it's a drawer. It just looks like it's a facing. And you pop the buttons and both the drawers pop out.
Well, you totally know I'm going to do that when I'm at your house next time.
That's fine. All you're going to find in there is old VHS tapes. Stuffed with thousands of dollars, but you won't know that.
That's right.
Kidding. Don't come to my house looking for that.
Nadia looks for answers from the police, but all they would tell her is that her mother will come back. That's not really what you want to hear, especially if your mother's missing. I mean, what would you do?
Well, if they were going to blow it off, I'd have no choice but to go straight into detective mode. I think most people would.
Exactly. Hence the checking the call log online.
Right. And of course, giving them dirty looks the whole time. Like, do your damn job.
The stink eye.
Right. Nobody wants that.
But she wasn't going to sit and just wait for her mother to return. She began to search on her own, posting flyers, going back and forth in the areas around her town. She even continued to text Victoria, offering her anything for information of where her mom was.
I'm curious, like, what did she offer her? Like, more money?
She did. She basically said anything she had, anything and everything. She offered her money, her apartment, anything.
Wow, that's crazy.
She wanted to find her mom. One day, Nadia is driving around looking and posting flyers when she realizes that the main highways have traffic cameras on them and that maybe they caught something showing her mother. So she gets access to the photographs. Peter Van Zandt asks her how did she gain access, and Nadia says, quote, "It's Russia. You buy things. You have money, you buy things," end quote. And she said it so matter-of-factly.
Well, hey, it sounds sucky, but if that's what you got to do, then at least you had a way to get it, even if it was corrupt.
And I don't know if you would have access without paying. Like if you just say, hey, I'm looking for something. I don't know why you wouldn't be able to gain certain access to certain things. I don't know how that works.
Because they want to get paid.
Nadia found what she was looking for, a picture of Victoria and her mother driving down the highway about 100 miles from the apartment. The picture was blurry, but she could definitely tell that it was the two of them. It was the last known picture of her mother at 10 a.m. on October 5th. A plus for Nadia, seeing the picture gave her some hope that her mother was still alive. She notified Russian police about the traffic cam picture, but their response kind of shocked her. They told her they already have the pictures. Even though she was shocked, she was relieved because that meant now an investigation was open.
Well, why hadn't they shared that with her before? You would think that they would have wanted credit for finally doing their job at some point.
I don't know, maybe she didn't pay them. But who knows? Different country, different laws. Through the pictures, the police were able to get a license plate number and tracked it down to a car that was rented by Viktoria Nasyrova. She was brought in to take a lie detector test, but before they could submit a conclusive report, Victoria skipped town and hopped on the first flight out of Russia. She is now an international fugitive.
Nobody took her passport? I don't know why, but I thought that was standard procedure.
Well, she wasn't under arrest. She was just in for questioning. And I don't think that they take those unless they're considered a flight risk. And they usually do that through court orders, like at arraignments. And she hadn't been to court because she was just in for questioning. They wouldn't take it. Even with Victoria gone, Nadia continues to search for her mother, still hoping to find her alive. She literally stopped her own life, gave up everything, and quit her job. She dedicated her life to finding her mother. I tell you, she is one strong and determined woman. I think her anger towards Victoria also fueled some of that fire. Even though she didn't know what had happened to her mother, she still had an idea that Victoria did something.
Wow, she's really impressive and good for her that she was in a position to be able to do that because a lot of people would like to do that, but they're not in a position to do so.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know what her situation was, but I don't think it really mattered one way or the other. 7 months had passed, and in April 2015, Nadia gets a call that would change her life. They were burned human remains found about 2 hours away from Alla's apartment, and she was called in for an identification. Once Nadia looked at the remains, she said, and I quote, "No, it's not her. No, it's just remains." She continued to look at the remains, and a few minutes later, she recognized that yes, it was her mother, Alla. She recognized her by her teeth. I can't even imagine what that would be like. First, the phone call and having to look at what was a human and realizing that human had been murdered and burned and was your mother.
Yeah, she really is strong because I don't believe I could do that because, you may want to know, but then you'd know that she was murdered. So, you lose that hope. It's a lose-lose situation.
And that's something you're never going to get out of your head.
Exactly.
The remains were found in a town called Armavir. If you remember, this is the hometown of Victoria. Alla was dumped a quarter mile from where Victoria grew up. An international arrest warrant has now been issued by Interpol for Victoria. Nadia returned home to Brooklyn, New York, but she just wasn't going to let it go. She decided to look through Facebook to see if she could get any indication where Viktoria might be. And lo and behold, whose face pops up? Our narcissistic Viktoria. She's in Mexico, living her best life, posting pictures, and checking into all the fabulous places she's visiting. It was said that she is very intelligent, but I think in this instance, her self-importance and need to be the center of attention took over.
Geez, I know people just like that. They're their own worst enemies.
Nadia told immigration officials and the police, but Viktoria could not be found. Meanwhile, it's summer in another part of New York, and this guy that owns a dry cleaning business named Ruben Barukov is looking through online want ads and comes across an ad for a woman offering her services as a dominatrix or escort, I guess whatever your preference is.
You do you, boo.
Ruben contacts this woman. They begin to talk. She said that she likes to cook. He says he likes to eat, so they arrange a dinner and meet at her place. I mean, what man honestly doesn't like to eat?
Right.
She made fish. Now, fish would not be my first choice to cook for a new person, but regardless, they begin to eat. He said later that after one bite of the fish, within 5 minutes, he was out of it. He passed out. While he was out, this woman went shopping with his credit cards and the cash that he had. Altogether, it was about $3,400 that she spent.
Are you sure this is a woman? Because she's got some humongous cojones.
Yes, it is a woman.
Jeez.
2 days passed, and Ruben was still out of it and still with this woman. She took him to his dry cleaning business, and to explain his state to his employees and sister who were there, she said that he drank 2 bottles of wine, but also may have taken a pill or something. They were all in the back office, and randomly, one of the employees took a video of the woman as she's walking around in the office. His sister was concerned for Ruben's health, so she called 911, and they rushed him to the hospital. He was pretty sick. The woman left before the ambulance got there. He recuperated, but doesn't remember a thing after eating the fish. When he went back to his business, he saw that the woman had cleaned him out. She took money he kept in the basement and a watch. The woman they caught on the video, you guessed it, was Viktoria Nasyrova. She disappeared again.
You know, how does she keep disappearing so easily with those big bolas she's carting around?
I don't know, but she looks pretty aggressive.
Yikes.
It's August 28th, 2016 in Queens, a couple months after the fishy fish, and Olga Zvik, a stylist, gets a frantic call from a woman that went to her salon begging to do an emergency eyelash repair before she went out of town. I was conflicted about this. It sounds ridiculous to consider that an emergency, but as a woman who has had eyelash extensions, I kind of see the need, especially if you're going out of town.
You know, it's all perspective because just a couple of days ago, I was called into work for an emergency massage. I laughed, but still showed up.
Well, I can see more of an emergency massage than eyelashes.
Really? I mean, unless you're injured in some fashion, I can't.
Were they injured in some fashion?
No.
Ouch.
I'm just saying. I was like, really? And you'd be really surprised and shocked. I had just woken up. I wasn't supposed to be at work till 11, and it was like 8:10. I needed to be there by 9 with a half an hour drive. And I was in the car by 8:30, showered and ready.
Wow. Did you go to bed with your makeup on?
No.
Double wow.
Triple wow. And I looked somewhat normal.
You stick to that story.
That's what I'm hoping for anyway.
Okay. So Olga tells her that she didn't have any appointments available and that she doesn't do the work outside of the salon. But this woman was extremely pushy and wore her down, so she told her to come to her apartment. During her visits to the salon, the woman was always super friendly and wanting Olga to hang out outside of work, but Olga wasn't comfortable with that. She also wasn't too comfortable with her coming to her apartment either, but she'd already agreed. Part of Olga's uneasiness and her being uncomfortable was because this woman looked a lot like her. Same facial features, same color hair, kind of same build. You know, I actually have someone that I know that people get us confused all the time. And fortunately, she's a very sweet girl, just like me.
I'm sure when she opens her mouth and they see how sweet she is, the confusion stops.
Yeah, they usually call her my name or vice versa while our mouths are shut.
I would never think not to trust anybody who could be my doppelganger. I'm going to see my so-called friends differently now. You'll never pass as me, so we're good.
No, we will never pass as each other.
No, we will not.
So when this woman got to Olga's, she came with a few pieces of cheesecake from a famous bakery. After the woman scarfed up 2 of the pieces, she insisted that Olga try it. She reluctantly agreed and ate the 3rd piece. Shortly after eating the cheesecake, Olga starts to feel sick, dizzy, nauseous, and violently throws up, then blacks out and doesn't remember anything. The next thing Olga remembers is waking up in the hospital.
Cheesecake always makes me feel that way too, so what's the problem? But that may be because, I'm eating the entire cheesecake at one time.
So there's the problem. It's you.
Definitely me.
So apparently what happened, according to the neighbor, was that this woman had come and gone a few times out of Olga's apartment. She told the neighbor that Olga was sick. He wanted to make sure that she was okay, so he went into her apartment to check on her and couldn't believe what he saw. The apartment was like a sauna. The heater was turned all the way up in August. Now, this is August in New York. Then he saw Olga passed out on her bed in a sexy lingerie outfit, and on the floor scattered around were pills. He called 911 immediately. Olga spent 3 days in the hospital and was in a coma for 34 minutes. They had no idea what was wrong with her. They didn't find any drugs or anything in her system. Fortunately, she got better and went home on September 2nd.
A 34-minute coma? Is that what, a quickie coma? Drive-through unconsciousness? I'm intrigued. Why just 34 minutes?
I think I go into a coma sometimes when my husband's talking.
Self-induced coma?
Right. So Olga goes into her apartment and realizes that things are missing, purses and personal items. So she calls the police. A couple officers show up and she starts telling them what happened. She just got home from the hospital, that she'd been in and out of consciousness, was nauseous and dizzy. She still seems a little bit woozy. As they look around the apartment and bedroom, they start to think she might be under the influence, and she's telling them a tale about this woman that needed eyelashes with cheesecake. They were doubting the story, and I can see them literally rolling their eyes.
It's funny that eyelashes and cheesecake are her worst nightmare when those 2 exact things are a dream come true for me. Can't live without them.
That is so true.
You know me.
Yes, for a very long time. Olga's like, this really happened, and she knew this woman was up to something. They wanted to believe her, so they searched the apartment and found in the trash an empty plastic container with crumbs and food dribbles in it. They asked Olga if this is the container the cheesecake came in, and she said that it was. They bagged and tagged it as evidence. Detective Kevin Rogers starts to investigate. He calls the hospital to confirm that Olga was actually there, but they can't divulge any information, so that was a dead end. The container is tested, and no drugs or poisons are found in it. Rogers looks into who this mysterious woman is, and you probably already know, it's Viktoria Nasyrova. But he can't find any information on her or her whereabouts. Rogers again starts to doubt Olga's story until the neighbor is interviewed, and he tells Rogers about the strange woman that had gone in and out of Olga's apartment. Rogers starts to wonder if the scene in Olga's bedroom was set up to look like suicide and that someone had actually tried to kill her. Remember, she was found in lingerie? Olga told them that she was dressed in sweatpants before she had gotten sick. And remember, there was pills all over the floor?
Yeah, the scene is set like so Marilyn Monroe-ish,
It was. Total setup. So humbly, Rogers had to apologize to Olga for not believing her in the beginning and continues to investigate. Olga gets better and goes back to work and was telling one of her clients about what happened. The client is like, well, wait a minute, the same thing happened to one of my husband's friends. He met this woman named Viktoria. She made him dinner. He got violently ill, and she took cash, credit cards, and jewelry from him. So what I'm kind of gathering is that this specific area where everybody's living and doing business is like a Russian and Ukraine neighborhood?
That's what makes sense to me. Those little small areas. I mean, how did she think she was going to get away with it for too long?
And staying in the same area where people obviously know everybody.
Exactly. You got to go outside of your neighborhood, sister.
Viktoria is now wanted in connection with 2 poisonings or attempted murders and 1 murder in Russia of Alla Alexenko, and she is off the grid. 2017 rolls around, and Nadia Ford, remember she's Alla's daughter, is still looking for Viktoria and decides to hire Herman Weisberg, a private eye and former New York police officer. He's pretty smart and a little cocky from what I can tell. He starts with Viktoria's social media and says, quote, "I never look at what people want me to see on those sites. I'm used to looking at everything except for what's supposed to draw your attention in," end quote. See, he's a little cocky.
Yeah, but he sounds a little smart.
As he's looking through the pictures, he found sort of a clue. Viktoria was wearing mirrored Ray-Bans while taking a selfie in a car. In the reflection, he sees the car's dashboard and the stitching from the driver's seat upholstery. The next day, he goes to the train station, since there are like hundreds to thousands of cars parked there, and begins to look into windows at different upholstery. My first thought is, where's security? Doesn't that look like he's looking for an unlocked car to steal or something inside? I guess just my suspicious nature. The insane part of that is that he actually finds a car with similar upholstery. It was black leather with gray stitching. It's a Chrysler 3000. I had a Chrysler 3000, but my interior was kind of a light gray, if I remember correctly. So I wouldn't know if the black gray upholstery is Chrysler specific, but I do remember loving that car. Well, until I got my new car.
Right? You had to keep up with the big boys.
After finding the car, Weisberg goes back to the social media posts and realizes that Viktoria is taking a lot of selfies around the Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn area. So he sends some of his people to that area, and they find a bunch of Chrysler 300s and start taking license plate numbers down. If you lived in that area, wouldn't you think that was a little suspicious?
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't like that at all.
Especially if they're taking my license number down.
Yeah, I don't like that at all.
Anyway, they start running the license plate numbers and come across an owner with a Russian-sounding name. I think that's considered profiling, personally.
It sounds like it.
Weisberg goes to this address and finds the car and starts looking around and notices that some of the selfies that Viktoria took had some of the same backgrounds as in the areas he's standing in. At some point, they spot her with her boyfriend. His apartment just happens to be a few blocks away from Nadia's home.
So wait a minute, the detective is just standing there and he sees her?
No, I think they had made several visits. At some point, they had spotted them.
Oh, interesting.
The interviewer asked Nadia if she went to find her. Nadia said no. He asked why. She said, quote, "Because I would kill her," end quote. She really needs to express herself and not hold back, but honestly, I probably would have thought the same thing.
Yeah, just send her some cheesecake. That ought to do the trick.
Well, she scarfed the other 2 pieces down, probably loves cheesecake.
She's a sucker for cheesecake.
Remember how I said she was a narcissist? Well, T, this is gonna set you off just like it did her boyfriend's neighbors. Apparently, Viktoria got jealous of her boyfriend's beagle named Joey. She was upset because he was getting a lot of attention in the house, and she allegedly poisoned Joey on his birthday. All right, go ahead, go off.
First of all, what a plot twist. That's very weird. But this woman definitely needs to be caught, covered in honey, and strapped to a red ant hill. That's all I'm going to say.
You definitely aren't holding back on that one.
You know, there's just no room on this earth for people who abuse or murder the helpless. No. We don't need them.
No. Isn't there a gorilla somewhere in your repertoire of punishments?
A silverback gorilla. Just put her in the same, I don't know. She's a she, so I don't know. Put her in the same cage as a silverback gorilla. There you go. And hopefully he likes her.
That's right. So like I said, the boyfriend's neighbors, who were ladies, weren't happy about Joey, what happened to him. So they're standing on the street with their dogs in Brooklyn talking to the interviewer. One says, She killed his dog. That be. And what kind of cracked me up is she had that Brooklyn accent, which made it even more aggressive. But
Yeah,
she was pissed.
I don't blame her. It's disgusting.
Now, I don't understand this one. Weisberg called Interpol and Homeland Security to report Victoria's location, but neither one agreed to take action. I thought she was an international fugitive. Why wouldn't they do anything? That being said, the only thing I could think of is that she has to be deported or extradited from the U.S., and I don't know how that works. So Weisberg called NYPD on March 20th, 2017, and they didn't waste any time and arrested her that day. Detective Rogers also received a call that Viktoria Nasyrova has been arrested and is in custody. He couldn't believe it and started to think about Olga Svik and the Cheesecake case. He looks over the police photos and evidence that was collected from Victoria's apartment and saw something that clicked with him. He's going, maybe Viktoria wasn't after Olga's purses after all, especially since he saw Olga's ID in the evidence. The resemblance was uncanny. Rogers said, quote, I think she wanted to kill this woman and assume her identity, end quote. Now he's on a mission to prove it. Even though they already tested the cheesecake container and didn't find anything, he sent it back to have more extensive tests done, and voila, something was found. It contained phenazepam, which is used in Russia primarily as a sedative, and I'm pretty sure it's illegal in the U.S. It comes in either powder or liquid form, and from what I read, has no smell or taste. But it is especially dangerous in a hot environment. You know, kind of like maybe when the heat is turned all the way up in Olga's apartment. There's no doubt that Viktoria knew what she was doing. Now, Viktoria had been in jail for 4 months, and she agreed to be interviewed by Peter Van Sant. Peter starts asking her about her alleged victims, starting with Alla Alexenko. Viktoria said she didn't have anything to do with her disappearance, and when asked, she says she didn't kill Alla. He brings up that Olga, and this I thought was clever because he described the whole situation in a matter of sentences. Peter says, quote, there's a woman named Olga that looks a lot like you, who claims that you tried to kill her by giving her a piece of poisoned cheesecake. You wanted her dead so you could steal her identity, end quote. Viktoria replies in Russian with this translation, quote, I know who you mean. I know this young woman. I can tell you that. I didn't force her to eat it, end quote. When I heard her say that, I went, what? Stating the obvious, she didn't say it wasn't poison. She said she didn't force her to eat it.
Wordplay. I absolutely love it.
Telling you. Peter follows that up with, quote, you're telling me all of these accusations against you, all of that is false, end quote. She says, and I quote, no, I admit doing a part of it, but I will only talk about it at the trial. The trial, however, didn't take place until January 2023. It was delayed for the same reason the world stopped spinning for 18 months.
Could it be for a pandemic? I don't know. I'm just guessing.
The little old pandemic. Yes. So the trial starts with the assistant district attorney and his opening remarks that he was very adamant about. He said that this is not a story about a beautician and cheesecake. This is not a joke. Oh, he was so aggressive when he said that.
So were people treating it like a joke? I mean, why was he so aggressive?
Because, I mean, if you hear beautician, cheesecake, he was anticipating what they might think.
I think that was all in his head. So, I don't see the joke there.
He was just very adamant.
Is there a song, Beauty and the Cheesecake?
See how you are?
But until he says it, it's not in my head, so it's his fault.
Blame the assistant district attorney.
Yeah, he's planting the seed.
So he talks about the cheesecake container that miraculously still has crumbs in it as the potential murder weapon, that the defendant tried to kill Olga to assume her identity. The one thing they were not allowed to bring up was that Viktoria was wanted in Russia for murder, probably because she wasn't arrested or convicted of it, is my opinion. Witnesses start to testify, which we couldn't see because they didn't allow cameras in. But Olga testifies, telling the jury what happened to her, and the whole time, Viktoria just smiles and smirks at her. Next, it's Nadia's turn, Allah's daughter, and she is just wanting Viktoria to look at her, which she never does. To me, that's very telling.
I find it really weird that she's all brave and smirky with one and won't even make eye contact with the other, like she's intimidated all of a sudden. Isn't that weird?
It's weird, but I mean, you assume that she killed her mother and she's an older woman, kind of a respect thing. I killed your mother. I mean, I can see it. Even though the assistant district attorney couldn't bring up the murder charges in Russia, they had Nadia, in her own words, basically say that there was a serious crime that happened in Russia. Doing this, Nadia naturally reacted with her body language, which the hope was the jury would catch on to. They thought Viktoria was going to testify on her behalf, but she declined to. There was a comment that they thought she was because she likes to talk.
Right.
However, and this was so perfect, the interview that she did in jail with Peter Van Sant was added into evidence. The interview where she said, "I didn't force her to eat it," that was just awesome.
That is so dumb. I mean, she's kind of smart up until this point, and then all of a sudden, it's like she just had a day of dumbness. Like, I don't get it.
Now, I don't know if this was a strategy or if there were no witnesses for the defense, but Viktoria's attorney didn't call any witnesses. Instead, he talked about how the case was a spectacle, that there is reasonable doubt because there is no direct evidence. No one saw Viktoria put the poison in the cheesecake, and the hospital couldn't find anything in Olga's system. Oh, and that there was nothing particularly unusual about Viktoria's life in New York.
Nobody who's trying to poison somebody is going to allow for anybody to see it. Well, nobody's smart. So, that's not any surprise that nobody saw it happen. I hate all that stuff. You know what I mean? Because, it happened. She's the most likely person to have done it. But anyway, I'm rambling because it's frustrating. But I'm curious as to whether she had a job or not. You haven't said anything about her working or how she's living and surviving here. How was she supporting this Facebook-worthy lifestyle if she didn't have a job? That should be very telling as to where the money was coming from if she wasn't working.
Exactly. I didn't see anything about employment. I mean, realistically, she was a con artist and a thief. So, I mean, that's what she did. So you're right. Where is the money coming from? She lived with people, used their cars, or, posed as a dominatrix to drug and steal from them.
Yeah, I mean, she's not a person of great caliber. Let's put it that way.
So the nail in her coffin was when the prosecutor said, yes, she's just been living a normal life in the U.S., and that's the point. Her U.S. visa was about to expire, and when it did, she would be forced to go back to Russia and face charges. She needed a new identity to stay in the U.S. and hide. Defense attorney follows this up with, it's not about what's happening in Russia. And so if she poisoned the cheesecake didn't mean she wanted to kill Olga. That was not proven, and you have to conclude beyond the reasonable doubt that she did want her dead. I wonder if he heard the words coming out of his mouth.
It's very confusing.
The jury goes in to deliberate, and an hour and a half later they return. Viktoria Nasyrova was found guilty of attempted murder in the second degree, attempted assault in the second degree, unlawful imprisonment in the first degree, and petty larceny. The maximum sentence would be 25 years, although she was sentenced to 21 years and 5 years of post-release supervision with a 6-year credit of time served. But the bright and shiny note is that she will face deportation back to Russia, where she most likely will be tried for the murder of Alla Alexenko. I think that makes the 5-year post-release supervision moot.
It definitely does.
As Viktoria was leaving the court after her sentencing, she turned and said to the court, F you. Isn't she just pretty?
So classy.
Since her arrest and awaiting trial, Viktoria was attacked by multiple inmates in 2018 while in Rikers Island and suffered injuries to her face. After her sentencing, she is serving her time at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility in New York and has taken up a hobby. She has been drawing and creating 3D art. Her signature 3D art is letters of people's names with butterflies and other things. Viktoria told the New York Post, quote, "I get an enormous amount of pleasure from seeing people's faces when I give them what they ordered from me. Nobody ever expects it. I can call what I make without false modesty works of art, even for me. They look like little miracles," end quote.
It's a drawing. Calm down, Viktoria.
But they're 3D. Come on, she makes little miracles.
Ridiculous.
The arrogance and narcissism continues as she tells the New York Post about how she feels about her inmates. Quote, "I don't want to sound like I'm better than others, although in some ways I am. But to find someone on your intellectual level is hard to find here that I can really communicate with. I want to talk to people about art, culture, travel, and books," end quote. Oh, honey, your intellectual level? Weren't you the one that left the cheesecake container at Olga's apartment?
Right?
Weren't you the one that kept Olga's ID and passport at your apartment? Weren't you the one that said, "I didn't force her to eat it"?
Because that makes you innocent.
Weren't you the one that was posting your face and location all over social media? Like a law enforcement source tells me, we don't catch the smart ones.
And she's too dumb to know she's not smart.
So arrogant. Something to stew over. In 2018, Viktoria sued New York City for negligence in the Rikers Island attack. The city settled and paid her $325,000. I think Olga, Ruben, and Nadia should sue her for emotional distress she caused and for the items and money she stole. I mean, I would really love to see that.
So does she get to keep that money as an inmate? I mean, that makes no sense because it's her own fault that she's in prison to begin with.
I don't know the rules. I really don't. I mean, I would guess on some level she probably has to pay outstanding debts like attorneys, things like that. And she does have money go on her books for stuff in prison, but I really don't know that. And there's a whole thing about prison rights, so maybe she does.
Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
So after all the tragedy in this story with the death of Alla Alexenko and Olga Svik's attempted murder and the trauma that she has suffered and continues to suffer with her having a hard time trusting people, something good has come out of something so ugly. Nadia Ford, Alla's daughter, and Olga have become good, lifelong friends.
Well, that's nice. That's a nice ending, but Viktoria still didn't get what she was owed. No way.
I would hope that she gets out of prison and has to go back to Russia, and then she's done.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. I don't think I've ever really heard about someone getting such a large settlement for being injured in prison either. Have we talked about this before?
Yeah, we did do one, and I can't for the life remember who it was. We did have one where another inmate sued, and I think, I want to say $200,000 or $250,000 they got. Yeah.
Just you have a better memory than me because I'm like, that's a lot of money. Yeah,
what's your face worth?
It's right. It should go to her victims' families for sure. She should not get to keep any of that.
Absolutely.
Well, that was a very interesting story. And I know you were challenged on saying those names throughout this entire story. Good for you, spitting them out eventually.
Spitting them out is so the truth.
I feel so sorry for your microphone right now.
All full of avas.
Exactly. Well, very good story. Good story to come back to.
Well, thank you.
We are very happy to be back. And again, very excited about what's going to be coming in the next few weeks. And we appreciate you all. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to take care, have fun, and let your grimaginations run wild. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye. We would just like to thank you all for sharing your time with us. And if you'd like to send us your creepy little grim bits, we would love to hear your personal stories, interests, and suggestions. Please email them to grimwitwithdimwits@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram @grimwitwithdimwits, X @grimwitwithdimwits, and Facebook grimwitwithdimwits. And please join us every Monday for new episodes and feel free to share us with your grim-loving friends.
And we would really appreciate if you would take a minute to rate and review. 5-star ratings go a long way and they would really help us out. Until then, we would love it if you'd come back next week to delve with us into the strange and unusual things we just can't wrap our skulls around.